you're competing against you're competing with all of the other news that's out there. So you don't get to connect with the voters in a meaningful way. And, when you have 100,000 voters in a riding, which is roughly what you would have, let's say 40, 50,000 households in your typical riding, you're not going to reach them all knocking on the door. And if you knock on the door and talk to them, you may only have 1 or 2 minutes with each of them. And the final thing I have to say about it is, and I know I'm going on, but it's really worth providing this kind of detail to listeners out there. The typical spending limit for a riding is somewhere north of $100,000. So 110, maybe as much as $120,000 currently in Canada. Well, if I want to send just one letter to each of those of the voters in my riding, okay, well, let's say to the household in my riding, I'm going to spend somewhere probably in the neighborhood with first-class postage. I'm going to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, probably about $2 per mail item, which is going to cost me $100,000 thereabouts, which is almost my entire election budget. So I'm not even going to send a mailing, one mailing, explaining in an adult way what it is that we're proposing to do. So as I say, in our rush to protect democracy from excessive money, we're starving.
Yeah, well, that obviously makes sense. And the trouble is when you try to, that is inside baseball to most people, and they just tune out. That's the party's problem. That's not my problem. I just don't want major corporations donating tens of millions of dollars to a candidate or a party I don't like. So this is the best way to fix it. Well, as you point out, there are downsides.
Well, you don't have, you could, I said again, I'm not against spending limits and I'm not against contribution limits. I'm just saying that they have to be realistic in what those limits are. So, we say basically that people can only give somewhere in the order of $1,600. It's $1,650 or $1,675 in this election cycle, okay? But that's their total contribution. So that's not just their contribution to a particular candidate, but that's the aggregate contribution. So if you give during an election campaign $500 to a political party, that leaves you with a little over $1,100 change dollars to give to your local campaign, to your local candidate. And maybe you have 3 candidates you want to support, so you have to break that up into 3 ways. So again, I come back to, if you even doubled the contribution level and doubled the spending level, it's not like people are going to be running around buying elections. It's the difference between being able to contribute in a federal election, $1,600 or $3,200. Well, who's being bought with a contribution of $3,200? It's nonsensical. You could double, you could even treble both the spending limit and the contribution limits, and you're still going to be safe with respect to undue influence of money in our electoral process, in my very humble opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of truth in that opinion, because let's face it, it's one thing to try to. This is what they've done: is they've taken a runaway racehorse and slammed it into a brick wall, and then wonder why the horse doesn't want to run anymore. To
use a racehorse analogy.
I've known it for what. Yeah, well, it makes you feel like a 3-legged camel in a 4-legged horse race. You're putting on lots of energy, but you're not winning any races.
All right, Nick, we're going to have to go for a break again. We're coming to the top of the hour. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We'll be back in a few minutes here on the Nick and Joe Show on the Think Radio broadcast. Back to the Nick and Joe Show. I'm Joe, he's Nick, and going to run through the normal housekeeping stuff. So, if you want to join our conversation live, if you're listening to the show online and you're on the website, what's the URL? Oh, the nickandjoeshow.com. I don't know why I had a bit of a brain freeze there. I'm not really sure why that was. So if you want to join in the nickandjoeshow.com, you can, and you're on that page, just click on the comment or the chat bubble on the player. If you haven't logged in, you may have to log in. If you haven't registered, you may have to register and log in. That's to make sure you're a real flesh and blood human being. You can also join using your computer audio by clicking on the link a little further down on the web page, where they follow the instructions. Please, if you do that, and you can do that, by the way, on Facebook Live, but if you do that, please make sure that you pause your player when you do it. You'll still be able to listen to the show, but you'll listen to the show through your audio connected to the show. It's the same thing as calling in using a regular telephone. So if you've got your player going, you're going to get all confused, and so will we. You're going to have a lot of feedback, and you're going to get all confused with the delay, because there's about a 10-second delay between what you hear either through, on your car radio or at home on your radio or on the computer, and what we're actually talking about. And that delay does not exist when you're connected to us by phone or by computer audio, trying to talk to us or to participate in the show. So that's the second way. The third way, of course, is, the old-fashioned, you can call us toll-free anywhere in North America, 855-346-1020. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have to say about housekeeping. But we do have some interesting information, Nick. I'm going to let you explain what's happening with you, because Nick's got a bit of an announcement on a personal level.
Yeah, it was, it dropped out of the blue into my lap here about a month ago. I ended up I've been looking for full-time work for quite a while, because, it was just economically something we felt we had to get done. So what we did was I saw an ad, or my wife brought to me an ad for a job for an airline called North Star Air. And I thought, look, I looked at the requirements, and I thought, yeah, I'm pretty close to most of these. So I sent them off a resume thinking, they're never going to call me back. I'm never going to hear from them again. So we had a little fun with the way that we put the cover letter together, used a little humor in the beginning, and, we're serious about my qualifications at the end. Was said things like this particular opportunity will fuel my passion, because they were interviewing me, or eventually interviewed me to be the fuel systems manager for the airline. Anyway, so we said this position would fuel my passion for flying, because Joseph, as well as I do, that I love to fly, and I'm working towards my own pilot license. Not commercially, of course, but certainly from a private level. And 2 days later, after we sent it in, we got it back. We got a phone call. Sorry, take that back. We got a phone call, and they asked me if I would do a Zoom meeting with the second in command in the airline and the third person in command, under whom I would be serving. Anyway, I said, well, yeah, of course. So they said, are you serious? I said, yes. And the question is, are you serious about me? He said, well, let's have that interview. So we did. And when we did 2 interviews, when the second one was over, they said, well, the job's yours if you want it. Well, this is a substantial job with a substantial paycheck. So after I picked my job off the floor, they said, when can you be here? I said, how about yesterday? Well, of course, that's not going to work. So it's been, the last month have been absolute pandemonium around my place, because all the logistics, like what are we going to do with the farm? What are we going to do with the horses? What are we going to do with this? What are we going to do with that? All this stuff. How does it affect the Nick and Joe show? I mean, it turns out it won't affect it. We'll be able to carry on doing what we're doing, because not only is there internet up there, it's pretty good, and they also have a small radio station up there. So who knows? We might be adding them to the fleet. I don't know yet. It's too early to say for sure. But talk about exciting. Now, for those of you who don't know where I'm talking about, it's a little place called Pickle Lake, like dill pickle, like Heinz pickle, like Vlasic pickle. Why it's called Pickle Lake, I have no idea. But North Star Air flies out of there, and that's where my position will take me. It's 22-hour drive from my place to get there. So a 2-day road trip. It's 7 hours north of Thunder Bay. So for those of you who want to Google it, just have a look. And if you take Highway 599 north, you can drive all the way to Pickle Lake on pavement, but that's about as far as you can go and still stay on tarmac. You can drive further, I think it's another 440, 150 miles past that, where the road ends literally on the lip of a lake. And in the wintertime, that's where the ice road begins. So there's been lots of unbelievable things take place in the last little while. Everything from a 2-day yard, we put up a yard sale to get rid of some things, because now we have to come up with cash to make the trip. I had to buy a new pickup truck. I had to do a whole bunch of stuff I wasn't planning on, and we need cash in order to make the trip up there and have something to carry us over between the time we get there and the time I get my first paycheck. So all that's been going on, just insane. So we scheduled this yard sale for, I forget, last Saturday, whenever it was, from 10 till 2. Well, people were coming and buying stuff right through the following day. I mean, there wasn't a ton of money, but people don't spend a lot of money at yard sales anyway. But boy, did we move a lot of stuff. And all that stuff that we had to move was stuff now I don't have to worry about anymore. One of the big question marks is, what are our accommodations going to be like? We have no idea. We just know the company will provide something for us until we can find a more permanent dwelling up there. So we don't know what we're walking into. But from that perspective, it's something that my wife and I have been looking forward to, some kind of an adventure. And this seems to be it. So starting a week tomorrow, I'll be in my truck heading for Pickle Lake.
So that's really interesting. And of course, the big question that our listeners are going to be asking, and you've already touched on it, Nick, and that is, what does this do, or how does this affect the Nick and Joe show? And the answer is, it probably doesn't, because we do this show remotely anyway, the two of us. We have a studio here in Ottawa, and you've been doing the show from Killaloe for the most part. Sometimes you're here in Ottawa in the main studio. Most of the time lately, you've been doing your part of the show from the CRCH. Is it CHCR or CRCH? I really should have got that right. So I apologize to CHCR studio in Killaloe, and of course CHCR is one of our FM stations that broadcasts the show. So it's
one of our affiliate stations. Yes,
one of our affiliate stations. So it's worked out well for everybody concerned. Except sometimes the internet connection is not the best, but we usually work around it. That's perfectly fine. So who knows? Maybe we'll add Pickle Lake to our list of affiliates when you get up there. Well, I'm sure that they're starving for genuine conservative talk radio.
They do have their own little radio station. Hey, listen, I think any